All right. So today we're talking to another one of our success stories. This is Lee, who has basically become the ultimate ungettable girl. She was telling me a little bit about her situation before we got started recording and the importance of specifically why you need to kind of get yourself out there, date other men. And so not only did Lee not only get her ex back, but she chose to reject her ex after she was like, I'm not really sure he's up to par anymore. And now she's dating someone who is great. Is that a fair thing to say?
He's proving himself. We definitely I implemented a new rule where when I start dating someone, I'm going to give him a 90-day trial. Like
Okay,
before
the
I'm
90-day
fully
trial. So
yeah,
it's like a money back guarantee type situation.
If you really want something to be real and authentic, you have to work for it, and you don't want something immediately. You want to work towards something, and you don't want to give your whole entire being within a month or 2 months, because things come out of the closet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to be careful. And as you get older, like, I'm in my 30s, like, I'm not going to just bring some Joe to my mom and be like, hey, like, I want it worth it, and I want it to be real,
Well, no,
so,
I think you bring up a really interesting point here, and we'll get into the breakup stuff. Don't worry, anyone listening. But I think this is an interesting point. One thing I've noticed is there's like these certain tipping points that set men off specifically. Like you mentioned, like things come out of the closet as an example. Well, sometimes the more serious you get, that's when the more crazy stuff that comes out of the closet, like they're feeling a little bit more comfortable to let that side of it. So I think the 90-day trial is a pretty smart approach.
It's so important, and they respect you so much more. Like, that's the one thing I'll say. And it works. It really works. It does, in my mind. It works for me.
You're living it essentially. So, but
Yeah.
before we get to the happy roses at the end of the rainbow, let's go to the dark rain clouds. Poor analogy there, but yeah, take us back to the beginning of like when things went wrong, what the relationship was like with your ex.
So me and my ex like had the relationship everybody was like jealous of. We both were like, everyone called us Barbie and Ken. We never fought. Like, I got along so well with his parents and vice versa. And it was interesting. It was like back in the end of the spring. And we were actually about to go to a wedding the next weekend. We had started moving my stuff into his house, like literally, because
all right.
He was supposed to meet my nephew for the first time. And it was my first time meeting him as well, because with COVID and everything, they were living in Nashville. So it was like a couple double whammies. We were going up to see his family, the following weekend, everything. And like, we were so excited. We had a great weekend. And literally it was like a Sunday morning. We were about to leave for the beach. Like, I'm not kidding. We were about to, like, all our stuff was packed. Our backpacks were on, everything. And he's like, we need to talk. And I was like, it's really nice out. Should we go outside first? Like, can't we do this at the beach? He's like, no, we need to talk. And like, I sat down and I immediately knew, like, I didn't think it was coming, but once you see that look on the face, you're like, I'm about to have a rug taken out from under my feet, And I was like, I immediately said it to him. I was like, are we breaking up? And he's like, he couldn't even finish a sentence. He couldn't complete a sentence. He couldn't give me a rational reason. It was literally, the conversation was maybe 20 words on his side. And he's like, I'm going to leave, but you can pack your stuff. Like, literally, that was the only thing that came out of his mouth. So I literally was like, you're not leaving. Like, you're going to watch me do this. And then I quickly ran upstairs, called one of my guy friends, and he's like, you don't owe him anything. Take what you need and leave.
Okay.
And so legitimately, I hear the door close. He leaves. I'm there with our dog. And I'm like, well, I'm taking the dog. And it was literally a 20-minute, like, everything flipped. And I took what I needed and I just left. And I remember I went home, I called my sister, and she was like, are you serious? Like, the baby and her were like 3 days from coming out. She's like, what? Like, we have a wedding to go to. His name was on the invitation and everything. And I was like, I don't know. So I literally remember I picked up a girlfriend and we literally went out to brunch. Like we went out to brunch. She posted a picture of me on social media out to brunch, like literally to the point where, keep in mind, when my ex was breaking up with me, I just kept nodding. And I was like, okay, whatever you say, I'm not going to fight for this. I'm not going to have to prove myself. If you don't think I'm the person for you, that's it. Okay. Like, okay, that's it. And so then after that, I literally just remember sleeping for like 24 hours straight. And then I woke up in the morning and it was like a nightmare. Like it's so weird when someone just pulls themselves from your life and you don't see your phone ringing when usually you have your patterns, your routines. And I just was like numb. And I knew, because I've been watching you for years, like just to keep my mouth shut, because acting on impulse from the minute you break up with somebody is going to shape your entire outcome. And I can truly,
had you already been kind of familiar with no contact and stuff like that before this relationship?
Failed every time. I had failed every time before him.
So like, you were already kind of part of the program before this guy?
But I had been watching your YouTube videos for years. Gotcha. Like, yeah. And
so it was the long game to get you into a customer. Essentially, it took years to convince you.
Well, the guy wasn't worth it in my mind. So like, and this one, I was like, I'm going to spend my life with him. You talked about having. And so literally I, kept my mouth shut, and I was like, my stuff's still there. I know I need it, but I'm not going to contact him yet. So I think like 48 hours had gone by, and I'm driving home from work and an email pops up at like 9:30 at night. And basically it's from him. He couldn't even call to pick up the phone. It was like he was a coward. I was like, wow. And it's basically the same thing that I see on all of the reasons why men break up with women. It's like, oh, I can't give you what you give me. You're so great. You're a great person, blah, 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 blah. What I've learned is those are empty excuses to get out so they don't feel bad about themselves. Like, that's the one thing you have to remember. If you look for a pattern or a trend or Google, like, he said this, does that mean we're going to get back together? No, it's men when they're breaking up with you, I've learned, will say anything to get out of a situation, whether it's positive or negative. They want you out. Like, they have their mind up. Luckily my ex was a little bit more sensitive and didn't go that route. So then I looked at the email and I literally forwarded it to my twin, and I just laughed. And I was like, what a coward. He doesn't deserve a response. So then the next day I'm like, all right, I got to start getting some of my stuff back. So instead of responding to the email, I picked up the phone and I said, you know what? I need to get my stuff. And he's like, what? He's like, you saw the email though, right? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, but I need to get my stuff. Like, that doesn't warrant a response from me. Like, nothing that you said is salvaging us. I need to move forward. I'm coming to get my stuff.
Well, you're playing this breakup really good. Like, you're really doing a solid job here, because it's like a value proposition. If you think about it, like the way you're handling it screams value. Like, this is what a valuable woman would do. She's like, all right, fine, whatever. I can replace you, not the other way around.
It's not even that. We as women have to remember, we need to bet on, like, if we're getting dumped, anybody that's getting dumped, you have to bet on yourself. Like, you have to bet on yourself that when you are walking out the door or they're pushing you out the door, that you are the best they're ever going to have.
Yep.
And
most people don't think that, because their insecurities are so great and they're so anxious. It just sort of, that's what comes out.
I get it. But if you take it from that approach, like, I bet on myself that I'm so good of a person. No one else is. There's no other me in the world that they're going to feel a void. It's going to come, and whether it's 30 days, 90 days, a year, there's going to be that point where they sit there and I'm like, damn, you know what? Like, she never did this, or
this is the exact attitude. This here. Anyone listening, this is the attitude you need to have if you want to be successful.
Wow, she sat with my mom on Sundays and knitted, and she hates knitting. Those are the things that are going to, like, make you a better person. And I knew our relationship was such quality. It wasn't toxic. We weren't fighting. Like, those situations, you shouldn't get back with your ex. If you're fighting every other day, there's cheating. Like, come on. But this was actually something where I was like, all right, I'm a little iffy. I'm really going to do this right. And I was like, I bet on myself. And everyone's like, you're really not going to talk to him? I'm like, nope, 30 days. So that's when I bought the program. I was at the wedding and I was having
took a year to break you down,
yeah.
but we finally got you.
I was driving up to the wedding and I'm like feeling anxious because I know his name's going to be on everything. And I'm like, I'm downloading the program, I'm buying it. And I remember as I'm getting ready for the wedding, as I'm driving around, like I had my AirPods in and I'm just listening to chapter after chapter. And I'm like, all right, this is empowerment. Like, this is empowerment. This is what I'm going to do. And so I went to the wedding and I had a blast. I was meeting, a single woman at a wedding is a diamond in the rough. Like, we have to remember that. Yeah. So I showed up, and keep in mind that entire time, it had been like a week since we broke up. I went radio silent on social media. Like, I made it to a point where he had to check an obituary to see if I was alive. My friends were not allowed to post me. I didn't add anybody on it. And there was no breadcrumbing. Like, I was out. And so of course I go to the wedding, have a great time. I look great. And what do you think I do? The day after, it was on a Saturday. So Sunday night, I was like, I'm going to post this photo. And it's this beautiful photo. I'm in a field. I'm laughing. I'm smiling. And I waited till 7:00 at night because I knew that's when everyone's home from the weekend checking things. And smart. I hit post, and literally, like, the photo, like, for my friends, like, broke the internet. Everybody's like cheering me on. Everyone's like, yeah, like, that's it. Go. Boom. And then I went silent again. And that's when he started breaking. Cause, my friends and I would be out, they'd post something and then they'd check their stories, and he's immediately checking, like, to see, like, if I'm living or breathing. And then I just, kept with the program. But then the biggest thing was I didn't look back. I looked forward. And then what I did was, I had goals with this man. I had a timeline with this man. And the first thing I did was reset my goals for myself.
Right.
And I
what were some of those goals?
So, like, oh, sorry, my alarm's going off. So
No, sorry. Hey, it's time for our interview. We started a little bit early.
So some of the goals were like simple, like, get a place of your own. I was going to be living with him. I wasn't in an apartment I was happy with at the time. So I was at his place the majority of the time. So it was finding a quality home that I was proud of. You know what I mean? That was something I'm proud of. And then it was reassessing my career. I was really unhappy with my work schedule. And I was like, let me get it a little bit higher. Like, let me take myself to the next level. Let me challenge myself. And then it was like, I want to make X amount every single month. How am I going to do that? So, then it was like, be a better daughter, be a better friend, reconnect, apologize to your friends that you kind of put on the side when you're making your relationship a priority. And those are the things I really invested in. And then I reassessed my friend circle that I did have and made new friends, so I really tried to do a full transition, because for me, I knew that was the only progressive way to make a change in my life, to potentially never get this person back. If we stay stagnant who we are, and we don't evolve, and we don't see ourselves reaching new goals and new heights in our life, there's no intrinsic motivation. So, like, what I will say is challenge yourself to make yourself uncomfortable and actually follow through with the program and do things like that Trinity. Actually do the Trinity for yourself.
Right.
Don't do it for them. Don't do it for their friends to see. Do it for you, because the outcome was like, my outcome is now I have a better home. I make more money. I have an incredible job. And that's all for me.
Life
and that's
is
enough.
good.
Exactly.
So what's interesting about the goal setting, this is the question I want to ask you. I've been thinking a lot about this from like local goals to global goals. So if, like, you think of a local goal, that's kind of like short term. So, like, you mentioned the apartment. That's a great example of a local goal, because that's something that you can theoretically find within the span of 3 to 5 months. But then there's like bigger global goals, and the global goals are kind of like getting married, having kids, things like that. Did you only just set like local goals, or did you also set yourself global goals that would take years to get to?
Like, here I am, like being a bull and being like, I'm strong. I had this person like, but I was still hurting a lot.
Yeah.
And there were songs I could hear on the radio and stuff like that. So I did local goals because
Okay.
realistically dreams were like shattered. Like, I was like, I'm getting married next year. We said we're going to have kids in 2 years. How can I make a new local goal, like a global goal, when that would just cause more heartbreak? You don't want to trigger yourself,
Yeah. No, I think there's something to that too, because like, I think sometimes people, when they set those global big goals, like getting married, buying a house together, kids, things like that, it can serve as a productive North Star. But when you're going through a breakup, that North Star can be so bright, it kind of just ruins you,
Don't do it. Don't do it.
do it.
Be kind to
Local
yourself.
goals only.
Be kind to yourself. Like, you just have went through a huge transition in your life. Like, be kind to yourself and be realistic of what you can achieve, because realistically, some days I didn't want to get out of bed. So it's like, keeping it simple in the beginning and then seeing that movement is really how you make it work. Like, it really is how you make it work. And, when you have a entirely new life, basically, because that's what I did, I lost my person that I was living with, that I loved, that I saw a future with. I had to reset. I had to hit reset. And I think that's something we all aren't prepared to do, but that's what we have to do. You know what I mean? We can't attach ourselves to the past if we want to move forward.
So it seems like things are going pretty well. You're like posting all this stuff on social media. You're kind of capturing his attention. You're still kind of radio silent. It seems like you're kind of almost like coming out of water like a submarine every once in a while to post something, and then you go back down and underwater. When does things really begin to snowball for you with regards to the ex, like actively chasing and begging for you back and things of that nature?
So it wasn't like he was blowing up my phone. He sent a lot of testers, and it was actually interesting how it got back together. So keep in mind, we ended things at the end of May. And then I think mid-July, he reached out and was like, hey, I hope you had a good 4th of July. It was like July 21st.
So basically 3 weeks after July 4th, he reaches out, which is a really, really odd text message to send, like way after the fact.
Yep. And I was sitting at the pool with my friend at my brand new apartment. And you know what I did? Posted a picture of myself at the pool and just went out with my friends that night and didn't even respond. And then I responded the next, as that window of time, it literally, I think, was day 45. So I had gone past those 30 days and I was like, I don't think I'm in that mindset yet. I still knew I missed him, but I still knew I needed to move forward. So I was like, you know what? I'll wait till the next day. And I was like, yeah, things are going well. And he literally goes to me, he goes, yeah, like, what's going on in your life? I've been following your social media, but it's kind of hard to read what's going on. And I was like, sucker, like, because it's like, I'm posting little things like new apartment. I'm out with friends. He has no idea who they are. I'm out. I'm in the fitness.
Is the subtext there that he's worried you're dating someone else at all?
Probably. And he just saw me, like, I evolved. I have so many of his friends following me, and like, I'm a very prideful person. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove to them, like, I am something of worth, and I'm going to take this breakup with dignity. That's the biggest thing we have to remember, is that, like, at the end of the day, you want to go out with dignity. You want people to respect you. Like, the biggest thing is that it's actually interesting. I'm still very close with some of my ex's friends, and I don't think any of them would have been close with me if I didn't take a mature approach to the breakup.
Okay.
So basically, he's like, it's hard to see what's going on with your life. And I'm like, things are going really great. Like, sorry, gotta run, going to the pool. And then he reached out again because I still had some of his stuff. And so we agreed, we had gone back and forth. We talked on the phone a little bit. And then, we have the meetup, and I call him the day of the meetup, and I'm like, hey, I know you're busy, but are we good for later? And he's like, yeah, we can get a drink. And I'm going to drive 45 minutes. We're getting more than a drink. Like, this isn't an in and out, this is like, we're going to at least have some respect for one another. We've been together for a year. We could sit at a table at least, for an hour, exchange stuff and walk away. know what I mean? Not bring up the relationship and just be cordial. He's like, yeah. And I was like, you know what? I was like, you're clearly not prepared for this. I didn't entertain the conversation really. I knew what was happening. And I was like, you know what? Clearly you're not ready for this. I'm sorry. I thought otherwise. Took his stuff that I had still and just shipped it.
Shipped it to him.
I just shipped it.
Okay.
I shipped it and I went radio silent again for 30 days. And then I start getting the breadcrumbing texts again.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you know what? There's no question. There's no course of action that he's putting in these texts. I'm going to keep moving forward. You know, and then I started dating and, you know, he obviously caught wind of that. And I dated once again for myself. It wasn't to make him jealous. I met someone that I thought was pretty cool and I started dating them. And, you know, eventually he called me, my ex called me, he reached out. He's like, I really want to see you. I really want to talk to you. I did some coaching sessions with Anna and I was like, you know what, you should meet up with him. Okay. So then, you know, we meet up, waterworks, no other woman has ever treated me the way that you do. And I want another chance. Da, 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 da.
Pretty typical.
Like,
pretty typical.
Yeah. But the biggest thing
funny,
is
so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to interject here. I think the really funny part about this is I feel like the way you handled the breakup was so on point that it really played into that result. Like, I don't think you get that result if you are acting if you're acting like the typical anxious person after a breakup. You're begging for them back, you're crying, you're being too overtly jealous. I think the way you handled it really created this value gap between you and other women potentially that he could have, other alternatives for him. And I think that's the key component on why you got the result you did.
I followed exactly what you said too. Like, I remember there was one thing, it was like, change up your look a little bit, like go that extra mile. And I did that. I was doing those things. I was trying new things. I was surfing again. I used to sing. I was singing again. And he's like looking at all this stuff. He's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, I missed out on all of this that I could have been a part of.
Yep.
And
it's an
so
opportunity cost thing.
Yep. And so finally, you know, we start dating again. And it was okay. It wasn't anything astronomical. It was, you know, there were those great feelings, but at the same time, every morning I would, you know, when we got back together and things started working again, every morning there's still that fear that they're going to chicken out again, you know, like as much as I was doing everything right, like, you know, I still had that fear. But
did you ever talk to him about that at all? Or
absolutely.
And he gave you the whole probably spiel of like, you don't need to worry about this. I'm in it right here to try to, but did he actually do any actions like to back up anything he said?
Oh yeah. Like, so it was interesting because he was the one that told me what his weaknesses were and how he could have been a better man in the relationship. So it was like communication. So he really started communicating, quality time. And those were things we already were doing, but he took it to that next level. It was interesting because we always were at his place. We were going to move into his place. He started coming to mine. And I had some like very hard like, you know, my mom got really sick, and I will say this, he was my backbone through that. So he really was proving himself. But at the end of the day, when you know, I had 3 months to grow, and I'm looking at, you know, what he's doing when I'm not with him. I'm like, he's kind of a child still, you know, and he's like 5. I was like, do I really want this life anymore? Like, is this really it for me? Like, is he going to be just doing those same things? And is that really where I want to take my life? And then I started realizing that I was having that bad gut feeling that he told me about 4 months prior. And I needed to go with my gut and realize that he wasn't it.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, at least the way I've always looked at it, is I feel like when women put themselves in a position where men have to prove themselves to them, they're always in a, I don't know, inherently better position. And what's interesting about this is you had grown to such a level where you wanted to, I think it's kind of like a snowball type thing. You wanted to keep the growth going. Do you feel like he hindered it at all? Like just being with him kind of like set you back from like reaching your maximum potential?
I would have stayed in the same like complacent things I was, I would have stayed in the same job. I wouldn't have challenged myself. It was all simple. Like, I was a top performer in a company. I won like most valuable employee 1 year out of 2,000 employees. And it was like, all right, well, you're really good. Like, wow, those are really commendable things, but we're going to get married. We're going to have kids. And then you're going to stay home with the baby for 2 years and take care of it and not work.
Mm.
And
So that was your life trajectory.
that was going to be it. That was going to be it. And, who knows, maybe that's what I wanted, but that was what he wanted. And I was like, okay, well, I really want to be with him. So I'm going to do whatever he says. I really get married,
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't seem like the great foundation for a marriage that's going to last a long time, especially if there's that level of resentment. And then when you get kids involved, that adds an extra layer of complexity because you love your kids more than anything. So it just kind of muddies the waters, and you can end up feeling trapped. Not to say that you know, being a mom or all those stuff is like a fulfilling thing, but there's always that resentment potentially bubbling under the surface. And did you feel like that was kind of where that feeling came from?
Women have maternal clocks. Like, we have to remember that. And we grow up with a group of female friends and they all start getting married, and you don't want to be the last one. And I didn't want to be the last.
It's just like a peer pressure type thing.
Yeah, it's my peer pressure. And that's exactly what I was doing. So anything he was saying was enough. I was at age bracket to get married, get engaged. So this was it. This was it. This was complete in my mind. But realistically, I wasn't listening to myself. You know what I mean? My life, I hadn't accomplished the things that I wanted to accomplish that I knew I was capable of.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to say you don't want to get married. You don't want to have kids. You just feel like you don't want to be tied down to only having that as your potential future. If I'm getting that right.
And tied down with the wrong person.
Yeah. There's that too. So yeah. You eventually get to this, do you want me to wait a little bit?
Yeah. Say bye, Jackie. Don't worry. I'll talk. Can you just close the door? Bye.
First time that has ever happened on an interview.
It's hot. And I was like, oh my God, Jackie, that's my.
I have not shaved in days. I'm looking awful. And, so I will take the compliment and be thankful for that. Yeah. So obviously you meet someone new. How does that come about?
So one day I remember, like, the day we broke up, I was like, you know what, this doesn't feel right. And I sent him a message and I'm like, I want to talk to you on the phone. And he was like, I'm having a bad day. And I'm like, well, wait, why are you having a bad day? He's like, work is just really hard today. And that was it. I was like, you get paid well, you have a good job, like, and you're complaining, like, when people are starving, dying. My mom was dealing with cancer. So it was like, tell me what a real problem is, sweetheart. So that was it. I was done. I was like, listen, you have no sense of reality. And that's not the man that I want to have kids with, have a future with. Like, he truly showed his weakness second time around. And I think a lot of it had to do with how strong I was this time around. You know what I mean? And so, we ended it. And I think, like, it was actually interesting. I started, like, just hanging out with my friends a lot. And I was going to a concert, and it was like a month after we ended things. And my ex knew I was at the concert, and I'm literally sitting at the concert and I see my ex like 5 feet away. So
after you basically broken things off.
It was a month later, and it was interesting. I told him I was going to the concert. He helped me pick the tickets, like where I was sitting. So I was like,
basically, he knew to be there. He basically bought tickets to be there near you to try to win you back again.
It was an Eric Church concert. Do you know how packed those are? Like, it's not like a little rinky dink. Like, he went to like Madison Square Garden. Like,
okay.
Yeah. So I just like, I was like, whatever. So then I, started dating again. I had friends setting me up. I went on dating apps and I wasn't like, all right, let me pick the first available bachelor out there. I started talking to like 7 at once.
Okay.
I literally
No,
was like,
I think there's something great about that. It's like a numbers game. You're trying to find the right one.
We have to remember as women, like I have guy friends. I know when they're single, they're not just talking to one girl. Like
It's
I
true.
hate to say it, but they're not.
It's true.
And
it's absolutely true.
My psyche was like, you know what? I'm going to give the same amount of respect and effort that Amanda when I'm dating now. So I started dating multiple. It wasn't meaning like I was sleeping around or anything. It was like on Monday, I was going out to dinner with X. And then on Friday, I was going out to dinner with Y. And they were all different. And they were all bringing different things to the table. And I had a blast. I did it for like a solid 2 months. And I won't lie, every single one of those men respected me. They chased me because they knew I had options. I was assertive and I had my shit together.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, it wasn't like, hey, why haven't I heard from him? It was more like, why haven't I heard from her? Like, you know what I mean? Like we just had a great date. Why isn't she like blowing up my phone? Because it was like, you know what? I'm not going to give 110% yet. And so I kept dating. And then I met the unicorn and him and I, just meshed and it was easy from day one. And it was funny because he kept trying to meet up with me, but I had other dates and he's like, come on. And I'm like, oh, I can't tonight. Like, this is going to be our first date night. And then I remember like before, the night before our first date, he's like, I'm going to call you. And I'm like, I don't even know you. Like, he's like, I'm going to call you. So I was like, all right, if you could keep me on the phone for more than 10 minutes, I'll stay on the phone and talk to you. We were on the phone for like 4 hours. And then the next morning we woke
Don't you
up
love it when you get those connections? You just mesh so well. Yeah. Only a handful of times I've ever experienced that. Cause usually it's kind of not working, You're
talking to an absolute stranger. And he was my type. He was kind, and I was like, wow, like this could be it. Like, you get that gut feeling, the same gut feeling I had to end it with my ex. I was getting a gut feeling that I was actually potentially with the right person for once. We had the same common interests. We had the same mindsets. We spoke to our past and our accountability and the things that we wanted for our futures. And it matched. And it was interesting because our first date was supposed to be on a Saturday. And he's like, all right, I have football practice, but I'm coming over and I'm going to take you out at 9:00 at night the day before because I really want to see you. I'm like, no. And he's like, nope, I'm coming. We ended up going out that night and we just clicked. It all made sense.
Worked.
It was
easy, seamless. There was no trying to fit a square peg into a round hole type situation. It just worked. Maybe that was not the right analogy to use, but
it was. But like thing is that the biggest thing for me though was I still even though he was this amazing person, I was like, hold on, let me backtrack because I just went through some serious trauma with this breakup. Am I going to rush things just to have this happen again? Am I going to, push these other guys away? And I was like, absolutely not. And then I implemented the 90-day trial.
Okay. And here we are. We're still on the 90-day trial currently, right?
Absolutely. We're almost at the end, but
almost there.
He was like, we got to be exclusive. So like around like day 60, we did that. But it was one of my friends gave me the suggestion. He's like, put him on a 90-day trial because things come out of the closet and you still want to have options. And it worked. It really did work.
The guy you're currently dating, is he aware of the 90-day trial?
Absolutely. There are no secrets. And he knows that
I think that is the most amazing thing I've ever heard because,
and he knows this interview right now.
Here's potentially a philosophical question between you and I here. You are implementing this 90-day trial on this guy, but you've told him about it. So wouldn't theoretically he be on his best behavior during the 90 days and then all the crazy crap comes out? Do you worry ever about that?
No, because you know what? I mean, it's so funny because he says this to me all the time. He's like, your crazy matches my crazy. And that's the biggest thing also, after going through the program and learning things, you can never hold yourself back from being yourself in a relationship. And you
Mhm.
need to vocalize beginning your morals and your values, and you need to slowly introduce them to your past and any skeletons you have, but like you just have to authentically be yourself if you want a genuine relationship. And I think that's something that I didn't do in my past with my ex. It was very like I was more composed, but this time I was like, you know what, I'm just bat out of hell, I'm gonna have some fun, like, and if it sticks, it sticks, but I'm not going to be someone that I'm not in a year or in 2 years. I'm going to evolve as a person, but he's never going to say like, hey, this wasn't the person I signed up for.
Well, I think what's also interesting about that approach is it's so much easier to live life just being truthful and honest and not playing the
Yeah,
games. I mean, in a weird way, 90-day trial is kind of a game. It's sort of a playing hard to
it is.
get type thing, but you're
Yeah.
being honest about it. And weirdly enough, when you find that right person or that right connection, I feel like it is just inherently easier. It's
And
just easier.
it's interesting because when I told him I was doing this, he's like, all right, just send me I want to hear it when it's done. He's like, I'm really proud of you. Like, and he like,
Cool.
not, yeah, he was like, that's awesome, and he's not like, oh, like, you know, you did an ex recovery program and like now you're gonna do that deep back. He's like, cool. He's like, let me know how it goes, like,
Yeah,
and that's that. And
it's
my
it's always
ex,
interesting. Yeah,
huh?
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
My ex actually knows that I'm doing this because obviously I was like, out of respect, I just want you
You've
to know.
just told everyone. So this is gonna be our most watched episode ever, right here.
I maybe, and he's gonna forward it to his mom. Like, I didn't know you broke up with her like before all that stuff. But you have to like the biggest thing I've learned is like you have to find who you are as a person with this program, and that's the success. That's how you have your success. And I realized that I had to be comfortable with myself before I loved somebody else again. And those are all the things that the program taught me. I think a lot of the times when women are doing the program, the whole time they're like, all right, I'm supposed to evolve, but my ex is in the back of my mind at all times. I'm checking his social media, I'm doing this, I'm
They're
posting a
they're
jealousy photo.
they're they're evolving for the wrong reasons. They're evolving for their ex.
Exactly.
They're not evolving for themselves. And that's the distinction that is so important to make, and that I have such
And then
trouble getting people to accept.
if you fake it, so for example, okay, like you're gonna pick up this beautiful hobby and you're gonna do it and you're gonna get really good at it, but then when you get back with your ex, you let it go. They're gonna be like, wait, I
Yeah.
thought you were independent,
You were
but you're
just doing that to like attract me back, essentially.
men are not dumb. So like, that's the biggest thing. Like you have to have like, and I think a lot of the times in the pattern when I like read the face groups and stuff, like we like a lot of the women really do shape their lives around these men. And I was one of them.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's no way to live, because at the end of the day, the question's always this: are they good enough for me? It's not, am I good enough for them? You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And that you have to remember when, picking our significant others, we're not questioning our worth. It's questioning if they're worthy enough to be in our lives, to be around our families, our children, our animals, even. Like you have to remember your worth and your value, because there's only one of you in the world, and you might not be the prettiest, you might in your eyes, or vice versa, but like you are special, and that's how you have to tackle this.
Yeah, everyone has some unique aspect of themselves that they can offer and almost have an unfair advantage. And I think the inherent problem with most people in the Facebook group is they don't recognize that because they're so codependent on that relationship. By nature,
Mhm.
most people on the Facebook group are anxious attachment styles, and anxious attachment styles naturally just are shaping their entire lives around this relationship. And while they're great problem solvers, and that's one of the aspects of the because I feel like anxious attachment styles like they're good problem solvers, and that's one of the positive aspects about it, but we always focus on the negative aspect. So I've been trying to get people to use that
Yeah.
problem solving aspect in a positive way. So use kind of the
Yeah.
advantage, find the disadvantage and turn it into advantage, essentially, is what I'm saying. That was
Yeah. And
really
stop
poorly
taking
worded, but you're right.
it.
Yeah.
I think what you're trying to say is like stop putting the blame on yourself. Like you read the stories and they're like, I was clingy, I was
Hmm.
this, it's my fault, I'm the reason why he left. Da, da, da.
Hmm.
No, that's not the reason. Like It takes two people.
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah.
if you go like that, you can't be a doormat.
No, you're right. And I think also like a lot of it is due to they're attracting. So what's interesting about your story and what I think maybe you're not speaking enough to is the fact that your new person seems to be more in line with what you want in the future. You're doing the 90-day trial essentially to prove that. But what's interesting is when you look at your past relationship with your ex, potentially what happened is that guy had some avoidant tendencies. And what happens in a lot of times in the Facebook group is they're in similar situations where they're anxious. They entirely revolve their life around wrapping it up into this relationship. The avoidant person falls away because they're just kind of like, I can't take all the pressure from that person. And then they naturally think in their heads, oh, it's my fault. But to your point, no, it's two people. You may have played some role in some of the anxious tendencies or some of the crazy things you did during the relationship, but also the fact that the guy wasn't willing to sit down with you and communicate with you and make you feel kind of like you belonged in the relationship. They got to take ownership of that. And you said like a lot of times when men break up with you, they're giving you the it's not you, it's me excuse, but they're just trying to appear altruistic when they're not really altruistic at all. And that's kind of the point we're trying to make.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in the past, in my past relationships, it was always like, oh, my boyfriend, my boyfriend, my boyfriend. And now it's like, now that I'm in this new relationship, yes, he is my boyfriend. Like, even though it's a 90-day trial, it's still like, yes, that is my significant other. Like, I don't associate myself with him like that. Like, it's like, yes, he complements my life, but I don't need to keep affirming verbally that, oh yeah, me and him did this on this day. Like, I know he's my person. I know it works. And that's all I need to prove to myself. Like, at the end of the day, I don't need to be like, oh, this is my boyfriend. It's like, you know what? People will know. Like, we're a strong couple and I'm confident with him. Like, I know it's almost like he provides a shield like around me and I feel warm, knowing he's in my life. But it's like at the same time, he's not what I center my life around.
Yeah, I think there's something, because really what
Does
you're
that make
speaking
sense?
to, no, totally makes sense. What I think you're speaking to here is how you derive meaning in your life. And I think a lot of the mistake people make is they derive their entire meaning in life around this relationship. And what you're saying is essentially, no, that's a complementary aspect of how I derive meaning. But all these other things over here also create the meaning in my life. This is what gives me fulfillment. The relationship is just like one pillar of that. It's a great pillar, arguably the strongest one, but it's not the only pillar.
Yeah. And like, if it crumbles, it's not going to ever define me again. And that's what this program taught me to do. And I think that's what people really need to remember. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, the world is still spinning. It's just how you choose to like get up and move. Like, the world is still moving. You sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to get you anywhere, even if you want your ex back. But it's if you start moving forward authentically, you're going to get what you want eventually, whether it's your ex, whether it's, someone else, whether it's anything. It's like, you gotta do it. And I will say, like, with the program, you actually have to do it for yourself. If you are like, I'm only doing this for my ex, you're not going to get them back the right way.
Yeah. And I think you hit on something really profound again, which is, I think a lot of people misunderstand when they say, I want my ex back, but that's not really what they want. Really what they want is a loving relationship that, potentially lifelong, but that gives them joy. That's what you want. If I were to offer you your ex back, but the ex is in this really poor relationship with you, there's fighting all the time, versus someone else who can provide warmth. You mentioned like, he makes you feel warm and all that stuff, versus that's really what you want. You want that kind of security. You don't want to get in a relationship with an ex who's going to not be right for you. And I think that's the distinction, because if you started thinking about like, oh, I need to get my ex back, I need to get my ex back, you're doing things to get your ex back. You need to do things to make yourself into someone that can attract or magnetize those other types of people to you, whether that's your ex or not. And I think that's what you're hitting on.
Because when you go through a breakup, you like, that's the lowest you feel. Like anybody you can walk into a room and everyone's like, wow, she's the most beautiful, but you don't feel that way anymore. And like the biggest thing is that the program, if you do it right, helps you get your confidence back up and helps you realize, like, you challenging us for the skill sets and the Trinity and stuff like that. It really, like, if you take a step back and look at all that you accomplish, it's like, wow, like I'm really powerful and I can do all this during this like terrible time in my life. Like I can accomplish
too.
anything. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
looking back at your situation, do you feel like, what do you feel like was the most important thing that got you to this result? Like going back, what would you say if you had to pick one thing that was the most important thing?
When my ex broke up with me, I said, okay. It's like, okay. I was like, whatever you feel is correct. Okay.
When you say okay, did you just left it at that? You didn't get into any breakup talk or some sort of like, I need closure. You're just like, okay, got your stuff and left.
You're done with me. I'm not going to beg. You're done with me. I'm not going to beg to be in your life.
But how did you get that confidence? How did you get that confidence to be able to say that?
How did I do it? So, I remember back in the day, like I remember one time me and my ex broke up and I like threw myself on the ground and I was like sobbing and it happened. Other happened to be there because we were moving me out of past boyfriends. Like, you know, we were living together and we had broken up and we called my parents to get my stuff out to help. And I was like laying on the floor sobbing. And my mom just looks at me. She's like, you are a woman, have some respect for yourself. And I was,
so you need to have a mom like your mom, essentially, to get that
kind
of
but really unpacking it and watching the videos and stuff. And it's like, okay, I don't think a lot of the time, like when I talk to some of the girls in the group and stuff, and like my battle buddy, she'll be like, oh my God, I by accidentally sent him like 5 texts last night. Like I had been drinking a little and I was just like really nostalgic. And I kept asking him why, like we can't be together faster. And they're in like a good place. They're talking to them again, but then they get a little too pushy. And we've all been there when someone's pursuing us and they're really annoying and natty. And we're just like, no. So I don't think a lot of the time the people in the group remember it on the other side and how annoying it is and how unattractive it is. And it's like, you're not going to get anywhere, but you might get somewhere if you actually just accept it and be like, you know, you're right. This isn't working. You're not working for me either. Okay.
Yeah. I think also there's kind of like a little underlying vengeance motivation there. It's kind of like, oh, you think you can do better than me. I'm going to show you.
Yeah. But you know, and that's the case because if you truly love somebody, like, you know what you bring to the table. It's just whether or not they want it. And if they don't, it's their loss. Like that's what you have to realize. Like loving someone is one of the best feelings in the world. And if that person chooses to reject that love that you worked so hard to build, that you were vulnerable about, like, you know, you put yourself in a position where you truly, like, if you really truly love somebody and they don't want it, like that's on you. That's not like, that's on you. It's not on me. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, you also have to have the confidence in yourself to be able to get to that place emotionally. And it seems like sometimes you have to go through kind of the road of trials, so to speak, to get there. Like you mentioned the situation where you threw yourself on the ground crying to try to get the, you know, like that's a trial, but you learned from it. And that's the key.
Yeah. And like, I would say this to anybody, like when you're doing the program or like even when you decide to start dating again, and you should be dating while you're in the program, because realistically there's no promise that you're going to get your ex back, and you should see what else is out there. Cause there are amazing people out there that might work better for you. Like mine did, you know, but the biggest thing is that like, you need to remember, like, you got to put yourself out there and you got to at least take a little bit of a risk. Like you got to, because it will only bite you in the face at the end of the day. Like it's just the biggest thing is, and it's not like fake it till you make it, but you have to like, I would look at myself in the mirror every morning and be like, you are beautiful, you are smart, and it's not on you. This is not on you anymore. And like, you need to move forward, because what are you going to get just sitting there crying?
Yeah, I think that's the power of self-belief in a nutshell right there. You just and just going back to what you said earlier, you're just betting on yourself. You're just saying like, I'll push all the chips
Mhm.
in. I know I'm going to come out the other end and be fine with this. And that
Yep.
is the key component that so many people miss, because they don't have that level of self-confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like you, the way you do the program, it's not manipulative, but it really does work if you follow it. Like the success rate should be 100 if you just actually listen to what you
It's
say.
not, unfortunately. In fact, I'm actually surprised it's as high as it is. Anna has like a really high success rate with her coaching clients, but like across the
Mhm.
board, we're finding 70% are doing pretty well. But I'm actually
Yeah.
surprised it's that high because of what you see in the Facebook group and the amount of pain people are going through there, and the amount of codependence they have in the relationship or the ex. It's just, I'm surprised. I'll just put it that way.
I remember I was talking to Anna one time because I did 2 sessions with her, and I was telling her about my ex, and I'll never forget. She said this one thing and it still sticks in my mind to this day. She goes, okay, so you told me all this stuff and you told me the things that he did. Because, you unpack your relationship with her and like kind of like how they're acting, even when you are speaking to them again. She's like, do you think he's good enough for you? And I was like, what?
No one's
Like,
ever
you're
asked
actually,
me that before.
you have to think he's worthy of you. She's like, because I'm talking to you and you seem amazing, but like, do you think he's actually worth it? And I literally sat there and I was like, you are a godsend. Like, you know what? You're right. Like, you're totally right. Like, she's like, if you want to get him back, get him back. But she's like, do you really think he's worth it? I mean, when someone breaks up with you, like that's a lot. They're put through a lot. And like, one thing I will say, like, instead of impulsively saying you want to get them back, like take some time and write a pros and cons list out and really unpack your relationship and why it went to that direction. Because when you see it in front of you, you're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we have a tendency to not remember. We only kind of remember those two distinct points, the really important, exciting moments, and then we remember a lot of the end and when it went wrong, but we don't remember all the other stuff in between. And when you kind of add it all up, it's a little harrowing to see it all there.
Yeah. And that's why, like, when you and I were talking about it, like, just take your time and like really get to know yourself again, because like this program, once again, like reintroduce you to yourself into such a beautiful, independent version of you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I remember being like, the financial part of the Trinity. Like, I got this is the most I've ever made in my life. And I don't think I would have thought about it that way if you didn't highlight that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah,
really important.
I think it all kind of bleeds in, like the Trinity specifically. Like every aspect kind of has this really interesting overlap with all the other aspects. But the financial part of things, it makes life easier and makes you feel like
Sure.
you should not gain value from monetary value. You should not be like, oh, I make this, so I'm more important. But there's a little bit of that, honestly. It feels like, wow, look how much I can make if I really set my mind. It kind of gives you that confidence, which in turn plays into relationships, because you feel like, well, you know what? I don't need a man, or I don't need this, or I don't need this person. I don't need to be
Exactly.
dependent
The
on a
level
house for them.
the level of security when you actually put yourself first is like, it's astounding. Like, and it's just amazing, because when I started dating and after the program, like out of all the guys I was dating, the one thing that every single man would say about me was like, I never know what you're thinking, and you're by far the hardest woman to read. And I give so much, and that's what I think made a lot of the guys like stick around and like want to see where it was going, because like, in the program, it teaches you to like really be that. Don't put everything on the table immediately. Like, don't tell them like, oh my God, you're amazing after one date, or like text them good morning immediately, and just like let them know that you're fully vested. Like you have to remember that, like, once again, they're just as lucky to have you. So like it's just so funny because sometimes like my boyfriend even will say, he's like, I still don't know what you're thinking half the time. And I'm like, eventually you will, but you're gonna have to work for that. Like, you know what I mean?
No, I think what men really like is they like to see hidden layers and hidden depths to women. So what happens a lot of time, to your point, is women come to the table and they're like, here's everything. Here's everything. And
Nope.
it can be interesting at first, especially if there's like a lot of, but once you kind of know everything, it's kind of like, that's it. There's like an inherent, like that's kind of disappointing and they lose interest.
Yep.
But
Yep.
if you do it your way, which is like,
There's so much, like your videos are so good, and I like just listen to it. Like you literally say like men are predators. So regardless of how long you're in a relationship, like you always have to make sure they're like you're giving them a little bit of a challenge. And it's like I
yeah,
remember one time the texting bubbles, like you're in the blue, like you don't want
yeah,
to be in the blue, like you want to
right.
be like it needs to be even. I carry those things, even though I know this person's like fully invested in me and they've said like I want to spend my life with you, blah 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 blah.
I
That
do
means
that with
nothing.
everyone I talk to, except maybe my wife, but we hardly ever text anymore because we live together. I see her every
Yep.
day, but every other person, and family excluded, but every other person, like even business wise, I'm always paying attention to that ratio, like making sure it's
Mhm.
1 to 1, because you never want to seem over eager, especially when you're negotiating things.
Yep. Yep. And like just like I remember like, like you explaining like the texting and like you shouldn't be texting them all day. Like you need to be going off and doing your things because then there's nothing to talk about. Like, like you have to actually be doing your own thing and being invested in your life instead of waiting for that next text. Because the minute like you let go and just like you go off and like do your own thing, like it's amazing. Like that's when the text comes. Like that's when like people come through. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
desire
it's
exists within
totally.
space. It's only when you give that person space that they actually miss you, and that's the hard thing for a lot of people.
But like, and once again, the Trinity is what helps you develop that confidence to give space. Because like once again, the goal is for you to be comfortable alone. Like I can go and sit at my house all weekend without a significant other, without my phone, without someone reaching out to me. I'll feel whole at the end of the day because I know who I am as a person.
Not many people can
You
say
know,
that, not especially nowadays.
and like find beauty in the silence and find beauty and like just like being like with yourself. It's so nice because like we all forget this. Like once we're in a relationship, it's you're going with somebody else. You're going on vacations with them again. You're doing things all the time, holidays, So it's like embrace the time that you actually can be alone because that's really when like you really can do that self-assessment and that like, all right, am I actually, is this still me? And that's the biggest thing that I also ask myself all the time. Like, if I'm at any point in this relationship not being myself, then it's not working.
I mean, you can't argue with the results. Seems like the results have been really great for you across the board. Not only did you get your ex back, but you basically found someone still on the 90-day trial, but almost there. Seems like a really
Yeah,
great fit. Seems like it's going really well. Seems like it's kind of easy. Are you
it is.
dur- So last question during this night. So it's not related to breakups. It's actually more the 90-day trial idea, because I think this is genius. So are you allowing yourself to be fully vulnerable with them? Like, are you opening up about like things that you've never told anyone before with him? Or is
Absolutely.
so you're allowing yourself to do that during the 90-day trial. You're not holding yourself back fully. Like
Practical. You can't not be yourself. Like, you know what
yeah.
I mean? And it's amazing because in relationships, there were so many times where I held myself back from being like, oh, I don't want to tell them about this yet, or this yet, and this yet. And I was like, you know what? Full speed ahead. Like, just be yourself. And like, if it's not going to work, I would rather know now than later.
Yeah, that's kind of the approach I think is the best approach, but people are so often worried about what other people think that they prevent themselves from being vulnerable, especially if you have black sheep in the closet and you're like, "Oh, I don't know how they're going to take this." Sometimes it's always better just to say like, "Hey, this is it. This is it. If you don't like it, whatever. That's fine."
Yeah. it's interesting because I told it, I used to be like kind of a little bit of like a challenge. And used to like, I used to be like kind of a little bit of a badass. I made a lot of mistakes in the past, and I would always be like, try and hide it. And then I was like, you know what? This person's going to know about it eventually. I gotta, this is it.
And that has worked out great. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. This is one of my favorite interviews ever. I'm going to try to push this to come out soon. Yeah, it was amazing. I feel like the one quote, weirdly enough, that sticks with me is you need to find the beauty in silence. I think there's something to that mindset there that I want to explore, especially like when I'm going to refer to this interview in articles when I'm writing articles, because like you have the essence of really UG, like ungettable. That's what we're looking for. And this is it.
Like watching your videos for
Get out of here. You're the one who did it. I didn't do anything.
I'm not kidding. Like, it's so funny because like if you look at my subscriptions, like you're the top. Like, there's no other dating video
It's shocking to me that you do that, because I like look at subscriptions. I'm like, why would anyone ever want to subscribe to my channel? But I love hearing it.
Yeah. And there's still times in my relationship where I'll reference your video.
That's great. I need to do more like relationship based videos and try to branch out into that space. But again, Lee, this was an amazing interview. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, inspiring women. I don't know what to say. I'm speechless.
Yeah.
Just, thanks.
Yeah. Hopefully it works out for them. I hope so.
Me too.